Hi there. Welcome to another edition of Complete Sports Media's podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Campbell. Well, we always have really amazing guests and lots of special people join us all the time here on Complete Sports Media. But today we've got an extra special guest. Really excited to be able to present Jim Hughson to my viewers and listeners. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. We've been waiting to see Jim for the past 5 months as the hockey had to take a hiatus for the COVID-19 pandemic. And really excited to have Jim join us. He's a Hockey Hall of Famer, legendary broadcaster, has broadcasted for over 40 years in Canada, covered the Canucks, the Leafs, the Expos, the Blue Jays, been the lead anchor at Hockey Night in Canada since 2009. A legendary voice, legendary guy, and the wealth of knowledge. He's about to enter the NHL bubble in the coming week, and we can't wait to talk to him about that and many other things. Let's bring him into the conversation. Okay, I think we've got Jim on the line here. So thanks so much, Jim. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, about to enter into the NHL bubble in a little under a week. How are you feeling? It's been a long time without hockey. Are you excited that you're finally getting to do the job that you're the best at?
And I appreciate you saying that. Well, as you can see behind me, in the Okanagan Valley right now, there's not a cloud in the sky, and it's about 30 degrees, and the water temperature is warmed up, and the golf course is in impeccable fashion. So I'm a little bit reluctant to leave, but on the other side, I'm happy for the National Hockey League that it looks like they're going to be able to salvage something out of this season, because I understand how devastating it would be economically for the league to lose this season, and we don't know what's on the horizon, so we don't even know what's coming for next season. So my feeling is that if the players can healthily get to the bubble that starts next Sunday, I think they're going to be okay. I think players in the National Hockey League are disciplined enough. I think there's enough leadership. It's the quintessential team game, and you don't mess around, and I don't think a lot of guys will. So I think if they can get there, it's going to be fine. This next few days, I believe, will be crucial in terms of getting to the bubble. I think they're going to get there, and it looks like it's going to happen. And when it does, it might turn into one heck of a fun tournament to watch.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be. Hockey fans like myself and many of my viewers and listeners are really excited. We've had a long wait to see live hockey, and to miss out on the playoffs, it just doesn't seem right. So I'm glad they were able to put this together. Were you surprised that the NHL decided on the two hub cities being in Canada? I know there was a lot of COVID-19 cases down in the U.S., so that was probably the main reason. But there was a lot of speculation on the other hub cities being in the U.S. How surprised were you that it was Toronto and Edmonton?
You know what? I congratulate the National Hockey League for their decision. I'm not surprised that they did it, because from the moment that the league took its pause in March, they said all the right things about health and safety would be first before anything. So if that's the case, then they made the right decision. There are a lot of people who it would have been easier for them to pick a couple of American hubs, because there aren't the quarantine restrictions. They could have got the players into some cities in the United States a lot easier, but there are some great advantages in Canada, not the least of which is that it's been a lot safer. We've had, at the community level, at the provincial level, and at the federal level, I think we've had terrific cooperation to do what we need to prevent the spread of the disease. It's still there for us, so they need the bubble, but I think they picked a couple of good places. I think they picked the right jurisdictions where the decision was made to allow them to play, not because it's, yeah, we're open, come on in, because they had the protocols in place and they'd taken all the precautions, and they seem to have, that are necessary to prevent the spread of this to the public and to the players from the public while they're in the bubble. So I think, yes, they made the right decision. It's going to be fascinating to watch. I think we're all really interested to watch it. It's going to be so different because during the playoffs, you usually travel so much. Everybody's, and that's one of the fatiguing parts of the playoffs for everybody is, you're dragging a suitcase around an airport for 60, 70 days. Even the players on charter flights, they're long and they're arduous, and you're changing time zones. Everybody's going to be in the same place and should be fresh. And so the hub situation, I think, is good, and Edmonton and Toronto will be good hosts. And the fact that everybody's healthy, it seems like a lot of people are healthy. And I mean, in terms of the injuries that have healed since the pause, it puts everybody on a level playing field in a place where they don't have to travel, and we should see some fantastic hockey.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think this will be an unprecedented season. There won't be guys banged up. There'll be a lot of health, like you mentioned. It's it's an arduous grind, that 82 game regular season schedule, and a lot of guys are really hurt and worn out from a long season, especially the young players that haven't played that many games in their previous careers. Do you expect the level of hockey to be extremely high because of that case?
I think it'll get there. I'm not sure what to expect at the start. There's a lot of variables. I mean, the players are skating now. I think they'll be in great shape. And you mentioned their health, and they've got, for the most part, injured players are coming back, and there will be other injuries. That's just a byproduct of the game. There will be people who are hurt. I don't know what to expect because this is unprecedented. So I'm just guessing that the exhibition game that each of these teams gets will be fascinating, because it's not like the preseason games that we see normally in September, where you see 4 guys who might actually make the team and the other guys know they're going to the minors, and the 4 guys who are actually going to be on the team could care less about the game and play at half throttle because they just don't want to get hurt. The exhibition game, for all of these teams, is going to be extremely important because they get to play an NHL caliber opponent that isn't an inter-squad game, and they've only got 1 game to prepare for a best-of-5 series. So that even the exhibition game should be interesting. And then I think the players will have to feel their way through what the atmosphere is like, because I've always said, Darren, that the first shift of the first game of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs is one of the most fascinating few seconds in sport, because the players are so amped up. The fans are crazy. And, coaches just got to get through the first shift for everybody and try and settle everybody down. And it's one of the most exciting moments in all of sport, but it won't be there. I'm not sure what it'll be like. What's that first shift going to be like for everybody? What's the contact going to be like without the fans going crazy and one shift feeding off another because of that? What's it going to be like? When the first goal is scored and there's no sounds in the rink, what's it going to be like on the next shift? Because guys usually get so fired up when their team scores a goal. So it's a night at the Improv for all of us. And, for fans and for broadcasters and for all the players, we're all going to try and figure this out together. And that in itself is kind of fun.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You mentioned night at the Improv. You're going to have to do some improvisation. Usually you do a bit of a layout quite often when there's a big goal scored. You let the fans take over, let the whole feeling of the building, the energy come into it. I guess that's going to be one of your hardest challenges, is to try to keep that energy level up and to, be able to not have those moments. You're going to have to, fill those moments with your voice and breaking it down with your color person. I know you've done some games with very little fans, but this is just going to be such a new challenge for you.
Yeah, it's going to be very different. I don't know. I can't honestly say that I have any idea what it's going to be like. And that in itself is kind of exciting, because you don't get many opportunities for unique in the broadcasting industry, right? It can be same old, and it's exciting, and you know what to expect at the start of the playoffs. We've never seen anything or worked in any environment like this. So in that sense, it's going to be quite fascinating. I do like to lay out a lot and let the fans take over. We're going to try some different things. And I would say to all the fans and people who are going to watch all of this and listen to it, that it's probably going to be different by the time we get to the 1st of October than it will be at the 1st of August, because it is a night at the Improv. We will try things like players' goal songs, teams' goal songs. There'll be music involved. There'll be probably some canned fan noise of some sort, because the game might need a little background. It might feel a little better with a little background sound. We'll try. We have all sorts of microphones on the ice, so you'll be able to hear some chatter, although the expletives will be delayed, and they'll be beeped out. But you'll still hear some of the chatter from the ice. You'll be able to hear the sticks and the skates. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure. From my standpoint, I'm just going to sort of accept it with open arms and try and figure it out as we go along, and hope that and as I think as the games go on, what it needs is a game right now. What we need is a game to see what the atmosphere is like for us and for everybody else, and then we'll take stock after that and see what happens.
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's a whole new world, and yeah, well, I guess we'll just see. I assume that you're going to be doing the Montreal Pittsburgh series and the Toronto Columbus series. Is that going to be your only requirement every day, other than watching all the games? Are you just doing one game a day, or do they have you doing more than that?
Well, they'll split up. There is, I think, one day in that preliminary round or the qualifying round where Toronto and Montreal play on the same day. So there'll be one day with 2 games. But for the most part, it'll be a game a day, because wisely, they've put, for the most part, Toronto and Montreal in prime time on alternating days, because they're 2 popular teams that draw great audiences in Canada. So that makes sense to do that. But it's going to be fascinating. And, we have to all remember that we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and we have to be careful, and probably more careful now than we were in March and April, because things are loosening up and people are going outside and people are starting to get together and cases are starting to mount. So my feeling is that I'll be very isolated in my little apartment, and I'll be watching games all day long, going to the rink to broadcast a game a day, maybe 2. But it'll be indoors for the most part, watching as many games as possible. And they're staggered enough so that it's even better than the springtime normal playoff, where you have to pick your game because there might be 3 on at the same time or 2 on at the same time. These hours are all going to be staggered, so if you're a real addict for all of this stuff, you can watch everything. And there will be people who are like that, and I'll just be one of them, where I'll be parked at a desk in front of a TV, watching and consuming as much as I can to prepare for what's down the line. Yeah. And I will be in Toronto to start this, so watching the Maple Leafs in Columbus and Pittsburgh and Montreal to get started, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Great. Yeah. Can't wait. Yeah, off the top, I mentioned that you're a Hockey Hall of Famer. Congratulations on that. Fantastic accomplishment, the Foster Hewitt Award, and being in that broadcast wing. Tell me about that experience with your family, being able to be inducted and enjoying all the amazing people in the hockey world. That must have been just such a thrill to have your family share that with you.
It was an exhausting weekend because there was just too much going on, but it's a spectacular honor. It's a hard weekend because I don't do me very well, but I was very happy that my family could be around and enjoy and meet a lot of the people that they would never otherwise meet. We had an event at a downtown bar and restaurant the night before the induction, and it allowed my family to meet all of the people that I work with, because in this business, the people that you work with don't live in the same town. I mean, people from all over the country, and they get together to put the games on, and they become your best friends because you live with them on the road and you're traveling with them, but your family doesn't know them because it's not like they can drop over to your house all the time. So this was an occasion where we could all get together and they could meet those people, and I could pay a great deal of thanks to all of them for the support that they've given me in all of these years. So that was pretty cool to be able to say thank you to a lot of people, to be able to get together with them, and kind of surreal to see a plaque and a picture in the Hockey Hall of Fame. but it was a truly great honor and a great weekend, and I really needed a nap by the time it was over.
Yeah, it must have been exhausting. Yeah, there's a lot of people pulling at your time there, I'm sure, over that week. Yeah, so yeah, you've won that, that award. You've got many Canadian Gemini awards and a Canadian Screen Award, a lot of really amazing honorees. Those are honors. Those are obviously individual awards, but you're part of a team. You go into a broadcast situation. There's hosts. There's color analysts, there's audio and video guys, there's your camera people. It's a big team that put on these productions, and you work with some of the best people in the world here in Canada. How proud is it and how great is it to be able to work with the best?
It's fantastic, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's like an all-star team. Um, what you want to be able to do, I think, in any profession, to do it at the highest level that you possibly can, is to be able to trust the people that are around you, so that when you sit down to do your job, all you have to do is worry about being the best at your job, knowing that you're surrounded by people who will be the best at theirs. So you don't have to, it doesn't have to be all consuming in that you're worried that the audio man isn't good enough, or the tape operator won't get you the replay that you need. And so there's so many people. We have like 45 to 60 people, depending on the depth of the broadcast and depending on whether it's a playoff game or not, that are involved in it. And the crew that I work on is like second to none. There is not a better broadcast crew in the entire world that I work with on a regular basis. So it is a true team game when it gets onto the television, and the finished product is the result of so many people's long hours and hard work and many, many years of learning to be great at their profession. So I never lose sight of the fact that Craig Simpson, who I work with all the time, and I are front and center, and you can hear our voices, and we're sort of the face of the broadcast. We're just Statler and Waldorf up there. It's all the Muppets in the back that are doing most of the work. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm glad you could point that out. There was a little controversy that happened about a week or two ago that said that NBC was going to have 50 of their broadcast people coming up and taking a lot of these positions. Will you have that team, or will it be a lot of unfamiliar faces from that NBC crew that you're going to be working with?
Well, actually, Darren, will end up with both, because it's very much this tournament is going to be very much like an Olympics. Um, so you have a world feed in each hub in Edmonton and Toronto. There will be a world feed, and there's a crew that provides that. So cameraman, audio, production crew in the mobile, they'll provide that feed. But then that feed is then sent to what is called a domestic broadcast production studio, which will be in Toronto, and our crew takes it from there. So we will have the NBC crew is providing the world feed in Toronto. They'll provide the basic needs, which is supposed to be, and at the Olympic level, it's always the same. It's a completely unbiased look at the game, right? It's just the pictures of the game. And then our domestic crew will take those pictures. We have a few cameras in the building that we can augment that production with, our own graphics, that sort of thing, so we can domesticize what we get from the world feed and put our own stamp on it. And that's the way it'll work in Edmonton as well. So it's not uncommon for this to happen. I understand that some people thought, and I don't disagree with them, that it should have been a Canadian crew in Toronto, because that's our mecca. Toronto is our New York. Would the Canadian broadcast company ever go down and do this feed in New York? I doubt it. But it is what it is, and they're really good technical people there. I have no doubt that they'll do a tremendous job and give us exactly what we need. But it's very similar to the World Cup or the Olympics. That's the way it's always done. So it's not something that's uncommon to any of us. We've all worked in this environment, and we'll figure it out in no time.
Excellent. Good to hear. Yeah, that's great. I don't think a lot of people knew that, so I'm glad you clarified that. And And I was disappointed because I've met many of those guys over the time I've been in the business, and I didn't want them to be out of work, and I'm glad you have a lot of your team still. So you did mention Craig Simpson, fantastic color analyst and partner of yours for so many years. Tell me about your relationship and how much he brings to the broadcast every time.
He's more importantly, he's just a great friend. We spend a lot of time together, and so that leads to when we're together, we're constantly talking about the game and breaking down what we've seen and what might happen in a game. That's usually it usually never turns out the way you think it will, but we kind of think the game the same way. We're always looking for the same kind of things. You're always trying to find why. It's always asking the question why did that happen, why did that play, why did that guy get a great scoring chance, what broke down there, why did they score that goal, where did the mistake happen that led to that goal. And I think that way. I think he thinks that way. We've been together long enough now that we're always pretty much on the same page, and at the end of the night we ask the question, did we tell an accurate story of the game? Did we tell the story of the game? And more often than not, I think we find a way to do that between the two of us. We have a great communication. We watch a lot of games together. We communicate while we're watching games during the week, for example, and just to keep on top of it. So it's a great relationship. I know I've been lucky enough to have partners in baseball and in hockey over the years that have become great friends. That's not always the case in broadcast scenarios. There's sometimes two taxis that leave the building when the game is over. That's never the case with the people I've worked with and with Craig. When the game is over, we're together, we're pals, but we'll be 6 feet apart when we watch the game.
Right. Yeah. That social distancing will still be there, but
you bet.
Well, I'm glad you talked about Craig. I want to do kind of a rapid fire thing right now. I want to give you some names of some people that you have worked with as color analysts. I want to go back to some of the early days. Tell me about working with John Garrett.
Great, funny guy, great friend, and wonderful sharing guy, and the absolute worst eater in the entire world. The only thing we couldn't do is go to dinner together all of the time because he has never used utensils in his life.
That's great. That's hilarious. That's so funny. I think I might have heard that before. Okay, tell me about some guys that you said became really close friends of yours. Gary Green and Roger Nielsen. Those guys were really legendary, epic color analysts.
Friends and mentors. I was living in Toronto when I started to work with Gary, just after he'd coached. I knew who Roger was, and he became a close friend because he'd been coaching in Vancouver, and I was working around the Canucks at the time when he coached them in 1982. So I knew Raj and Gary. They both lived out in the Peterborough area, and because of them, I moved out of Toronto and moved on to Westview Point Road, just a couple of doors down from Roger, and Gary lived right there. We traveled together, we watched games together, we worked together, and more importantly, what I learned from both of them is understanding the game. There was always this, I was like, I think a lot of people who are young and in the industry now think that the most important part of our job is to memorize the player names and know who's on the ice. That's actually the easiest part of the job. Everybody has redundancies in their working life that you remember, things that you do every day that you do, it's really easy because you're doing them all the time. That's what memorizing player names is like. So what they taught me and what I learned from them is the game. And I used to spend hours and hours with them talking, debating, having fun, cajoling each other, but learning the game and understanding the way the game was played and how it was changing. And Roger was such an innovator, and he shared all of that. So great memories, especially in the early part of my career with both Raj and Greener.
Nice. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, those guys are so great. And Roger Nielsen was an innovator, and it's always talked about so highly because of his innovation and doing video and so much of that. Are the Canucks the only team that actually have two coaches with statues out front of their arena, as far as you know? Any of the stadiums or arenas that you've ever been to?
I don't think there's two. I can't think of a place where there's two. No, not off the top of my head.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of a unique situation. Two legendary guys coaching the Canucks and taking them to the Stanley Cup Finals, and yeah, just being able to have such a huge impact on the sport. Pat Quinn, one of the legendary guys, and I'm really glad that you got an opportunity to get to know Roger even deeper than just a coach broadcaster relationship.
Yeah, I openly called him the goofiest man in the world, but he was an innovator and a great friend, and you wouldn't believe how far his tentacles go in hockey, even to this day. How many people he touched, and they in turn touched other people, taught them about not only about the game but about life and living, and he was just a great man and friend. Even though he was as goofy as can be, he constantly. I remember one time going to a black tie dinner with him in Toronto one time, and we went from Peterborough into Toronto, and he got to the curb and he realized he didn't have any buttons for his tuxedo. Like, he left all the buttons for the shirt and the cuffs. Oh crap! What am I going to do? I haven't got any buttons. And that's the sort of thing that would happen to him all the time. We were always afraid that he was going to fall asleep at the wheel of his car, because he was an insomniac, and that if he was watching games and working, he would stay up all night to do it, and then hop in his car and take his dog to the golf course and do a 18-hole round in 2.5 hours, and then be back in front of videos. He was an amazing guy, but an absolutely wonderful guy who I think of, and a lot of people in hockey think of all the time.
Yeah, I hear you, definitely. That's nice to hear that little snippet of a road story. Can you tell me your funniest road story? Is there something that you can remember that comes to mind pretty quickly that you're able to share with us, something that makes you laugh and you share it on dinner parties and things like that?
So probably a few stories that I wouldn't share. Probably a whole lot of stories that I wouldn't share. No, you know what? Life on the road is pretty interesting. It's there's always fun stories. When you travel with a group of people and you've got off days and you're together for months, there's always hilarious things that happen. There's great golf games. People organize some of the craziest things, from go-karts to hikes to golfing. I can't think of anything specific, but you make the best of life on the road. Otherwise, you'd go crazy spending all of your time in a hotel room. So you got to get out, you got to do things, you got to be with people. And I can tell you that there's, in the group that I travel with, there is no shortage of laughter. And that's a wonderful thing. It's good to have a smile on your face, even after like 45 straight days on the road, when you haven't seen your family, and things can get pretty depressing, because oh my God, this series is going to go 7 games and no sweep this time. But the groups that I've been around always make the best of it and have the best of times.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, you're very lucky in that department. Yeah, it's very nice to be around a really great group of people and lots of laughs, and it just makes life fun and your career really rewarding. So we touched on a lot of the hockey play by color analysts, sorry, and now I'd like to turn to baseball a little bit. You were able to broadcast the Blue Jays and the Expos, and Buck Martinez was an amazing color analyst for many years, who became a great play-by-play guy as well. Tell me about your relationship with Buck.
Still to this day, he's a great friend. And when I go to the Toronto hub, he'll be there calling baseball. So we'll probably be staying in the same building and have a chance to visit on occasion. Just a really good, solid friend who, like Kenny Singleton, who I worked with at the Montreal Expos games before I moved over to the Blue Jays, he opened a lot of doors. Like, Buck knows everybody in baseball, knew every manager. And when I started in the American League, Kenny did this for me in the National League as an all-star player and a great guy. I didn't know anybody. I knew the game, felt like I knew the game, was learning the game, and got a chance to broadcast it. but didn't know the players and the coaches. And what at the start of it for Kenny and then for Buck, what they did was open doors for me. Took me into the manager's office and introduced me and let me get to know the managers of the teams and helped me get to know players, and just was so sharing in their introduction of the world that they'd lived in for so long, and brought me in to be a part of it. And then from there, I could cultivate my own relationships and that sort of thing. But the relationship with Buck was one very similar to the one that I have to this day with Greg Simpson, in that we're not competing. We're not competing for information. We're sharing it. Just want to get the show right, want to get the game right, want to be accurate in what we do, and have a blast, not only on the air, but off the air, as friends. And so there's a great reward when you work with somebody and then you stop working with them, and 20 years later, they're still a best friend. So that's Buck.
Oh, great. Yeah. Nice to hear. Yeah. He's always seems like a fantastic guy, and yeah, just a wealth of knowledge, seems to know everybody in baseball. Very highly respected. I want to speak about another Buck. Buck Rogers was the manager when you were in Montreal, a legendary guy who was able to bring a lot of really talented ball players up. And during the time you were there, the Expos had some of the best success that they ever had. Must have been really nice to get an opportunity to talk to him on a daily basis and to be able to cover that team with so many stars.
It was that was fantastic. That was my introduction to baseball and to professional baseball. So when I talked my way into the job as the play-by-play man on TSN for Expos baseball, there were a lot of people that thought, because I'd never broadcast baseball, that I'd never seen a baseball game. So I had to prove a few people wrong about that. But from the moment that I got there, Buck Rogers was just the most welcoming, bigger than life guy. And there were so many neat guys on that team. His pitching coach, Larry Bear, was a wealth of knowledge and shared it all. So I could really go and tap into his knowledge of pitches and pitching and things like that. And then there were some great guys on the team. Tim Wallach was a fantastic player and a great guy. Bryn Smith as a pitcher, excuse me, was so approachable and so sharing of his profession. Tim Burke, who was the reliever, is a friend to this day. I was walking through a Buffalo airport no, it wasn't Buffalo. It was actually in Washington, D.C., but the person I ran into is from Buffalo and lives there. Joe Hesketh was a pitcher on that Expos team. And I bet I hadn't seen him in 15 years. And I hear somebody calling me across the airport. And it took me a second to realize who it was. And it was Joe Hesketh. And he was on that team as well. There were some really interesting guys who, I wouldn't say that we all became best friends or anything, but we had a wonderful working relationship, and they were a very open group. And that was a reflection of Buck Rogers' personality. He was such an open and welcoming guy and communicator with his players. And I don't think, even though baseball is a more individual sport than hockey is, there's still a team aspect to it. And Buck was the leader of that. And he was a leader of men. And he was a guy who would put people together. But my relationship with him was fantastic. He taught me so much about the game, introduced me to a lot of things that I didn't know, and would share a vast knowledge. There's another Buck who was a catcher, and they just have an interesting perspective on the game. They know so much about both sides of the game, the defensive part, the pitching part, and the hitting part. So I have great memories of my days broadcasting Expos games, not the least of which was going to Montreal a lot. I loved that place in the summer.
Yeah, it's a fantastic city. In the summer, I try to go there as much as I can. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, some of the players that you had the opportunity to cover: Andre Dawson, Tim Raines, Tim Wallach. There was Larry Walker, obviously. Just an incredible array of talent there. And they just could never get the stadium that they needed. Couldn't get that fan support and save the team. It broke a lot of people's hearts. It must have broke your heart because you had such a closeness with that organization.
Yeah, and you know what? The stadium was so bad, and I think there was great fan support there, and would be again. But it's about where you go to watch the game, and the Big O was never a good place to go and watch a game. The city itself was so receptive to the team, and there were a lot of things that went into them moving. But yeah, it was sad to see them go. I think that there'll be a day, and it may be further off because of what's gone on in our world now, but there will be a day, whether it's sharing games with Tampa or whether they get their own team again, there'll be a day when Montreal has baseball again, because it has a long, rich history of having baseball. And those were great teams. I mean, it was so neat to see that Larry Walker is going into the Baseball Hall of Fame. I was broadcasting the games when he got called up, and had a bit of a kinship with him because we were both West Coast guys. And just, you knew from the day that he arrived what a talent he was. He's one of the first guys, one of the only guys that I've ever broadcast a game where he was playing in right field and threw out a runner at first base on what should, well, any other outfielder's a base hit. Just had this amazing arm, and he could rake at the plate, as we all found out, but and a really good guy. And that was another trait of those teams, just really good, solid guys.
Yeah, Larry and I ended up forging a little bit of a friendship as well, because I was a West Coast guy and he was from here. And anytime I crossed paths with him, I made sure to mention where I was from, and it seemed to warm his heart a little bit and give me a little more time than he would have if I was just from somewhere else on the continent, and from Canada or the U.S. I know you switched to the Blue Jays, and you went in at a time when they were reaching unprecedented heights. They had won some division titles a few years before, but suddenly they were putting it together. And you were there when they won these World Series, and you were able to call a lot of these games. Tell me about the year that Whamco came together. White, Alomar, Molitor, Carter, and Olerud. What an amazing lineup. What a semblance that Pat Gillick was be able to put together, semblance of players. And just amazing talent in baseball there.
Wow, where to start? It was such a good team, and that was coming off a year where they'd won the World Series. There was so much about that team that was fascinating to watch. I would write Whamco in my scorebook first thing in the morning, because I knew that that's what the lineup would be in the afternoon. And I mean, Devon White was such an incredible center fielder. Some days didn't matter who was in right or left. He just covered the whole field. Robbie Alomar knew he was the best second baseman in baseball and played like it. Paul Molitor was a really interesting guy because he was so approachable, and he'd talk hitting all day long. He's an old-time baseball player who just hung around the ballpark. He was there early, he'd leave late. That's what he did, and he knew that was a chance for him to win. And just a wonderful guy. I always say Joe Carter is the guy, if you were trying to explain to somebody who didn't know anything about baseball and you wanted to teach them what a cleanup hitter is, show them what Joe Carter did. And then there was Olerud.
Olerud, yeah. Olerud.
John is one of the nicest men I've ever met in a sport. Just a really easygoing guy. Well, there'd be robust things going on in a locker room and lots of noise sometimes. And they were a pretty business-like team, so it wasn't like there was a cacophony of noise when you walked into the Blue Jays locker room. But John would be quietly sitting reading a book, and then he'd just go out and punish a right-handed pitcher all night long. If you ever got behind him in the count, he'd just rake. And that summer, he flirted with 400 when batting average still meant something. It was just so amazing to watch. So that team they'd have days, they were like the hockey's Edmonton Oilers of the 80s, where it looked like they were mailing it in one day, and they'd get behind a few runs, and then all of a sudden Whamco would come alive, and they'd score. They'd have a hit around inning, and they'd be in the lead, and then they'd turn it over to the bullpen. And a year before, they'd had Dwayne Ward setting up Tom Henke, and then Ward took over as the closer, and oftentimes it was other guys that would pitch to get them there. But in those 2 years, they were a 7-inning ball team. You couldn't get into the bullpen. So if you didn't get them in 7 innings, you weren't getting the Blue Jays. You weren't not likely, and they won 95 times. Their pitching was great. Pat Henkin was wonderful. Juan Guzman was just a treat to watch. for a whole bunch of different reasons, because he was all over the place, but man, he could throw. And Ward had, 45 saves, I think. So they were, that was a fascinating year. I felt fortunate to be there, and it's not lost on me how significant it was in baseball, in the baseball world, that for that period of time, there was never a meaningless game. They played for about 4 years. They were one of the, if not the best team in baseball. And so there were never any dog days of summer with those teams, because they were always in a race, and they were usually leading the race.
Yeah, they sure were. Yeah. Have so many great memories. And over this pandemic, they've been showing a ton of footage from those days, and it's been really nice to reminisce and remember all the amazing moments. And like you say, they could come back on any deficit and take over a game and win it. And yeah, it must have been a hard decision to walk away from baseball. I know, you would be away from your young family for a long time doing baseball and hockey. It must have been one of the toughest decisions you had to ever make, to just focus on one sport.
Not as tough as you think, because I knew at the time that the overlap in the seasons was becoming so great that it was really hard to do both. I had one spring in, I think it was 93, where in the month of April, I did 29 straight games in the same number of days, all in different cities. So I'd switched from baseball to hockey one night, and I was just, at the end of that month, I thought, this is madness. You just can't do this. But at the same time, when I made the decision in 1994, the job in Vancouver opened up because Jim Robson retired. And I had always wanted to move my family back to the West Coast, thought that they would truly enjoy it, wanted to live back in the West Coast. Not that I had a bad time in the East. It was wonderful. It was terrific for my career, but I'm a Western guy. I lived in BC most of my life. And so I wanted to get back to British Columbia. And there were few jobs that I would have left for, but the job in Vancouver to take over from Jim Robson was so prestigious because of what he did to it and how he built it up, that it made eminent sense to me. And as it turns out, it's been a pretty good decision. I'm still living in the West, still doing hockey. And then the decision between baseball and hockey was probably the tougher one. But, there's some simple reasons that you make decisions like that on occasion. And one of them would be, I thought about baseball being a wonderful game, but they insist on playing every day all summer. And hockey's a wintertime sport where I could be off in the summer with my family, and thought that was a really good idea. And so that was part of the decision as well. It's worked out okay.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, well, we're happy you made that decision, because it was amazing that you were able to come in and step in for a legendary voice like Jim Robson, and be able to, do yourself proud, do the Canucks proud. You were able to, take that daunting task on and, do a really fantastic job. It was a pleasure listening to you do the Canucks on a full-time basis for many years. When I was a young kid, I told my family that I wanted to be a broadcaster, and I specifically pointed to Jim Robson, and I said, when he retires, I'd like to take his job one day. And the very first guy that I ever met in the press box was Jim Robson, and he came up and was completely gracious, shared so many nice stories with me, and was just a fantastic guy. And you ended up taking that job, and
sorry about that.
There was a lot of jealousy, I guess, from probably thousands, if not tens of thousands, of young BC kids that dreamed of being a broadcaster and taking over that prestigious position. But tell me about Jim Robson. You met him obviously in the early 80s, and looked at that as a potential job opportunity when he decided to step aside. What a legendary guy, what a great guy. And it must have been fantastic for you to finally be able to take over.
A friend to this day, and I loved his work. I actually was his understudy in the 70s when I worked at CKNW. He would do television games on Saturday, and that's what gave me an opportunity to do play-by-play. I somehow talked my way into getting that job as well. and replacing him on the radio on about 15 occasions, and then in the playoffs when he would do Hockey Night in Canada, I would do the radio games, and that's what got me the bug to do play-by-play full time in hockey. But Jim was a mentor and a teacher, but not like a classroom teacher, because how he taught me and is just by allowing me to listen, to watch how he prepared, and to just kind of follow him around and see how he did the job. And to this day, the notebook that I use while a game is on is probably identical to what he had. He just taught me a good way to set it up, and I've never thought about changing it because it works. So yeah, he was really good at the job, really, really good at the job. And so that, and because he was so good at it, it made the Vancouver radio broadcast so good. It made it the best radio broadcast in the National Hockey League. So that's the reason that job was one that people sought, everybody wanted, because he was so good at it. So he set the bar pretty high for everybody. And I think, the succession has been really good. Shorty is fantastic. And Brendan Batchelor is just getting started, and he's an excellent broadcaster. So, you don't take jobs like that lightly, because there's big shoes to fill, and you have to work at it, or because you feel humiliated if you let it slip.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I was really happy to hear your voice on Rob Fay's podcast that had all the Canucks play-by-play guys over the years. It was a really, really neat. It was really neat that he put that together. And I hadn't realized that there was that many guys that had actually done it over the years. I always thought of Jim, yourself, and Shorty, and I guess a couple of the new guys. But he did a fantastic job. I'm so glad that you were part of that.
That was cool. It was. I just loved. They've been great days. So it's always fun to reminisce a little bit. It's great.
Yeah, very, very much so. So I heard you remark once that you were in New York for 45 days straight covering hockey. And this is going to be a pretty big stretch here that you're going to be in Toronto. Obviously, you're from Toronto, so you're pretty familiar with the city. What is this bubble like? Are you are you completely quarantined? Are you able to go out a little bit? How does it work?
See, I don't have to be in the actual player bubble. I can be in a media group where I will have, I'll basically go to the rink every day, have a temperature check, and if I'm okay, I can go into my workspace, do my job, and get out. And don't have to have contact with anybody. I'm not allowed to have any contact with people who are actually living in the bubble. But I can, I can talk to people on the phone. I can Zoom. So I can get information that way, but I will have no contact. So basically that allows me to be outside of the bubble, so that if I want to go out for a run on the lakeshore, I can do that. But I'll be pretty careful. I don't lose sight of the fact that we have a pandemic going on, and we all need to do our part to try and flatten the curve, and I will continue to do that part. So it's going to be very different than my 45 days in New York, where I experienced what it's like to be shoulder to shoulder with millions of people all day and all night, and live in the noisiest city in the world and one of the most fantastic cities in the world. This will be very different because Toronto still hasn't opened up, and it won't open up for me. It's going to be a very, probably a pretty individual life, just cooking my dinner, watching hockey games, and going to the rink and doing it again, Groundhog Day, over and over and over and over again.
Right.
For a long period of time.
Your wife, Denise, is not going to be joining you?
No, it's just, who would want to leave the West Coast when the weather's this good?
Right.
It's, you know what, it's not a very good family life that we have when we're on the road and we're working, because you're so consumed with work. There's not much social that can be done. Especially in this case, when you're in one city and there's a game every day, or there's several games every day, it would bore her to tears, because I would be sitting in front of the television watching hockey games all day, and she wouldn't want to do that. So I'll go it alone.
Okay, good. Well, behind every great man, a successful man, is a great woman. Tell me about that relationship. I understand that you walked into a broadcasting job and she was the first person that you met, and you've had a 30-year relationship now. Talk about her key to your success and everything that she's been able to provide for you?
It's probably really important that Denise could care less about hockey. You know, it's she'll watch the games, watch the finals. Got really interested when in the year the Canucks went to the Stanley Cup final, like everybody else in Vancouver did. But you know, she was the first person when I went in to do an audition and interview at the Canadian Sports Network, which was the parent company for Hockey Night in Canada. She was the executive assistant to the person I was going in to interview with. So we met. She felt sorry for me because I was living in a hotel and didn't know anybody, and invited me out to dinner and join some friends. And yeah, that's about 35 years ago. So yeah, we've been together ever since. I think it's really important in this position where you travel so much. Once we had our children at home, that she was able to sort of be the constant and be there for our kids and to hold our family together while I gallivanted all over the world and was gone for long periods of time and missed every important moment of my kids' lives. Not all of them, but a lot of them. But she was always there. So, and still is. So, and if, as most husbands know, if you survive 4 months of COVID quarantine with your wife, then you've probably got a pretty good relationship. And we've got a good one going because she cooks, I clean, and we hang out together every day.
That's great. Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, some relationships have been strained and a little tense, but I'm glad yours hasn't over this pandemic. Talk about your kids briefly. Are there aspirations to follow in your footsteps? What kind of career dreams and things do they have on the horizon?
Never wanted them to follow in my footsteps, and my son Matt and my daughter Jennifer are just have turned out to be wonderful young adults who have found their own way and their own businesses. You know, graduated from high school and university, and are in the working world. And as most parents, you just want your children to have a wonderful life and be good people and look after their friends, and they're really good at that. So I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. It's wonderful that you know, you can have such a solid, stable family life and be able to be a nomad, you know, touring all over North America and doing your job at such a high level. Yeah. So has it ever been a chore? Has it ever been a grind, this life, or have you been blessed to say that it's been you know, enjoyable almost every day?
If I complained about it, nobody would ever listen because I watch hockey games for a living. Come on. Can't be that difficult. The travel wears you down. It's especially, I mean, I chose to live on the West Coast, so that's my choice. And so my travel, living in the West and working in the East is not always easy. But you know what? I always, if I ever have a bad day, if I ever have you know, missed connections and bad aircraft and a bad travel day or delays and all of that sort of stuff, I constantly remind myself what I do for a living and how the game and my profession has treated me. So yeah, I have zero to complain about, and nobody would listen if I did.
Good. I heard you mention the best team that you ever watched assembled was the team from Sochi, that Canadian team. Just briefly describe how incredible it was, that talent.
Oh, they were just such a precision team. And you know, they weren't like the '87 Canada Cup teams or, you know, other Canada Cup teams where they just overwhelmed everybody offensively. I suppose they could have been. That's not the way Mike Babcock wanted them to play. They were precision-like in the way they played the game defensively, and they had enough scoring that they were very comfortable in a one-goal game. I just, you know, line after line and defensive pair after defense pair, and with the goaltending, that they just one line after another, they were just fantastic. I just really think that there was never a doubt in my mind that they were the best team in that tournament in Sochi and that they were going to win it, unless there was an accident somewhere or unless they lost a player, you know. But even there, if they'd had serious injuries, they were so deep, they were so good. And they got to the gold medal game against Sweden. You know, you never know what's going to happen when a game starts, but in the back of my mind, I thought, this is such a good team. They will not lose this game. And they didn't. But it was machine-like. the way that they played the game, and they were so good at it that in hindsight, especially live. I mean, I watched a lot of the, the 72 Summit Series, and then as I mentioned, the 87 Canada Cup, and they were fantastic. But I watched those on TV. This one I saw live, so in my mind, it was the best team I've ever watched play the game.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, just ready to wrap up pretty quick here. I just want to touch on a couple things. During this pandemic, we've seen a ton of games being broadcast, old highlights of games. Even this morning, I heard you broadcasting a game between the Bruins and the Blackhawks in 2013. You started off the day, the broadcast, by saying 85 games in 56 days. And this could be the final game of the season. Just being able to be there when the Stanley Cup's produced, lifelong dream of so many of these players finally getting come into fruition, being able to skate around with their families and hoist the cup. It must be just such a special feeling for you to be there always when they're presenting the Stanley Cup on that final day.
It is. I have such great respect for the trophy. I have great respect for those who win it, because I've watched firsthand how hard it is to win. And, you watch the players from the first round of the playoffs and how excited they are and how rambunctious and how energetic. Then you see by the third round, the white, gaunt faces and the long beards, and guys who haven't been outside for weeks because they're living in a hotel, they're at a rink, they're in a plane. They just do nothing but eat, sleep, and play hockey. You realize how long it takes and how hard it is and how many people fall by the wayside because of injury. And then you see in the faces the excitement when one team finally wins it, and so you know how hard it is to win that trophy. And then on the other side of it, for guys like me, you're no different than the players, in the sense that it's not as hard and it's not as arduous and it's not physically as demanding, but you always want to work. If you're ambitious and you want to be good at it, your ambition is to work on the final day of the season. You want to be there when the last game is played, just like the players. So I've never lost sight of the fact that how cool that is, how much respect I have for the trophy and the people who win it. And so I never want the audience to lose sight of the fact that it is the best trophy in the world. It is the hardest trophy to win. And there is a reason that I've never seen such excitement, such passion when teams win the Stanley Cup, and it never gets old. And the beauty of it is there's a whole bunch of small town guys, and everybody who wins the trophy can't wait to meet with their mom and dad if they're there, and their families. And it is a real family win for anybody who wins the Stanley Cup. So I never get tired of being around on the last day of the season.
Yeah, I'm glad you're there every time too. You really make it sound amazing. You do it justice, and it's fantastic. I'm so happy that you took over that role, and you and Craig should be very proud of yourself. The whole Hockey Night in Canada crew. I love the after hours with Scott Oak. It's my favorite hour on television.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so many of the things that you guys do is just amazing. You raise hockey to a fantastic level, and just make us proud to be Canadian. Thank you so much for your 40 years as a broadcaster and all the things that you've been able to do. I'm glad you're a West Coast guy. It's really nice to have you continuing to be in our province and representing us really well. And good luck in Toronto. I sure hope you can stay safe. You can get in there, do your job. Enjoy yourself. Really have a fun time doing it. Make it fun for all of us. We can't wait to listen to you, watch you. Really appreciate your time today, Jim. This has been really wonderful for me, and a lot of fun.
Thank you, Darren. I appreciate you having me on. Sorry for the beeps and the things that happen in a big. I haven't quite figured out how to shut off phone calls and texts while I'm doing Zoom calls, but we'll live with that. And I look forward to broadcasting an incredibly unique playoff, and we'll all learn what it's going to be like together, and that part will be fun. Enjoy watching some hockey on a nice warm day on a back deck with a cold beer.
Will do. Thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you very soon. Take care.
So long. Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now. All the best.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. That was a fantastic hour. And Jim Hughson, legendary broadcaster, just amazing guy. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking that time. And yeah, it's going to be fun. We're reaching unprecedented times. These bubbles are going to be strange and weird, but yeah, I just want to watch the hockey. I've been starving for it for 4 or 5 months, and we're about to embark on the playoffs very soon. It's very nice of Jim giving me that time. Thank you so much to Ronnie Patterson and Gip Joel and all the people that have contributed to this podcast. Very excited to share this with the world, and yeah, let's hope we can get Jim on sometime through the playoffs and get an opportunity to find out how things are going for him. Enjoy this podcast. Enjoy the NHL playoffs when they resume. And yeah, thanks so much as always for joining me on the Complete Sports Media Podcast. Thank you. Take care. Bye for now.